There are toys, and then there are freak-out-worthy toys. Toys that get big reactions like,
OMG, no way!
Or,
best present ever!
Or,
it's what I've always wanted.
For those toys, you need Walmart. They've got exclusives from major brands like Disney, Barbie, and Adventure Force that you can't find anywhere else. Toys that make kids jump for joy.
Thank you!
And make you a hero for giving them. Shop hundreds of exclusive toys.
Yes!
Welcome to your Walmart.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
We're into our postseason now on our D3 Coach and Coordinators of the Week series presented by Hansen Ratings. And we don't have a Coach of the Week throughout the playoffs, but we are going to focus on some of the top performances around the country throughout this 2024 season, looking at different aspects of the game. And right now we're going to leave those guys who were in the playoffs, we're going to leave them alone. So we're going to focus on some guys who have finished up their season but still turned in an excellent performance. And joining me, as he does every week, is the creator of Hansen Ratings, Logan Hansen. Logan, hard to believe that this season is already into week 2 of the playoffs here this coming weekend, but really moved by fast.
I know, yeah. It was a really quick first round of the playoffs, only having 8 games to watch on the week, and this weekend is when things are really going to get rolling. So 16 games between 32 teams, and it's with that first round out of the way, it's going to be a lot of top matchups between really good teams. We're not going to see probably as many blowouts in the first round as we usually do. And I'm really excited to see what happens next week, and then also to just talk to some of these coaches who excelled in different areas of the game that we probably didn't get a chance to talk to during the season, and recognize them for what they're doing.
We started the week off by talking with Drew Chance, and I handled that one on my own, but I know you had the chance to listen to Drew. The top offense in college football, just amazing numbers that they put up. What do you think of that performance? I know he's been on your radar before as a regional coach of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter who you're playing against when you're putting up the sort of numbers that they put up. And then playing in their conference when I'm doing my, fancy stats and trying to adjust for opponents and stuff, usually you're not going to see a Midwest Conference team do very favorable in the opponent-adjusted stuff, but Illinois College did. And it's not necessarily the stats that you'd think of with the prolific passing numbers. Like he mentioned in the interview, he wants to be able to run the ball, and they are one of the best offenses in the country at running the ball, preventing negative plays, preventing TFLs, preventing sacks. So, it's not just a one-trick pony show over there. They excel in all aspects of the game. So congrats to Coach Chance on another great season offensively with the Blue Boys.
That flips us to today's episode. We're going to focus on those guys who do stop the running game and do put that quarterback on his back, and that's the defensive line and one of the top performances in the country from this season. So how did you identify the coach, what things went into it, and of course you're going to introduce the coach as well?
So what I'm trying to do with these stats is look at, ways that it's really hard to isolate O-line or D-line and figure out good stats for those guys. But what I'm trying to do is look at TFLs, your rushing yards against, and then your sacks. So I'm looking at sack rate. How many sacks did you have against? How many total dropbacks did you see? How many TFLs did you have against? How many total run plays did you see? And then what sort of yardage were you allowing on those run plays? So I do all that, and then I do some opponent adjustments to see, did you play against a high quality opponent? And then also, combining all of those to see how were you overall. And one of the staffs that did really well in terms of the D-line rankings was Wittenberg. So when we look at Wittenberg, their defensive coordinator, Alan Moore, they had a sack rate of almost 10%. So 1 out of every 10 dropbacks that they faced, they were getting a sack. They had a TFL rate of 14%. So that's, 1 out of every 7 run plays, they were getting a tackle for a loss. And then they ranked really highly as well in rushing yards per play allowed. So it was a defensive front that did a great job, not just limiting yards, but then creating those havoc plays that we've talked about all season in this series. So teams that do a good job in all of those aspects, limiting yards, creating disruptive plays with their front, are teams that are going to see some success. And this week we're going to talk to Wittenberg's defensive line coach, Robert Landers. Wittenberg's defensive line this year got a sack rate of 10%. So 1 out of every 10 dropbacks that they saw, they got a sack. They had a tackle for loss rate of over 14%. So that's about 1 out of every 7 run plays that they faced. They were forcing negative yards on the offense. And then they had one of the top rushing defenses in the country as well in terms of yards per play. So really impressive stuff from them, creating those havoc plays that we've talked about all season. And then also, limiting the yardage. So if defenses are able to excel in both of those aspects, being disruptive and also limiting yardage, they're usually going to see quite a bit of success.
We're going to talk to Coach Landers here, former Ohio State Buckeye, now in his coaching career at Wittenberg University.
This episode is brought to you by Iams Pet Food. When you choose Iams dry dog or cat food, you can see a difference in your pet with your own eyes. Healthy energy in 5 days, healthy digestion in 10 days, and healthy skin and coat in just 25 days. Satisfaction for you and them. Guaranteed or your money back. Feed Iams dry dog or cat food and see a visible difference. Visit iams.com/difference to learn more.
Joining me now is the defensive line coach at Wittenberg, Robert Landers. And as we mentioned in the introduction, they did quite a good job up front on their tackles for loss, their rush defense, their sacks. And so we're going to get into some of those things and what made it happen for them. So, Coach, great to have you here on the podcast, and I appreciate you taking the time.
And I appreciate you for having me and taking time out of your day to have me on the show.
So, Coach, I think everybody has an interesting path into coaching. It wasn't necessarily something you intended to do, but you grew to love it pretty quickly, and now it's led to you coaching at Wittenberg. We'd love to tell that story real quick to our listeners.
So my journey started off, I'm originally born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. I ended up graduating from Wayne High School where I played D-line. If you see me now, contrary to how I grew up and when I played, I'm a lot smaller then. So played D-line at Wayne, got a full ride to Ohio State, played at Ohio State 4 out of my 5 years there. I redshirted my first year. I started my tenure with Coach Meyer. I ended with Coach Day as far as head coaches go, and then I had Larry Johnson, who was my position coach my entire way through. Then from there, it came out during COVID, so COVID time was real weird, especially being an athlete. And then for me in particular, a D-lineman of my stature, I kind of needed to get my face out as much as possible, and it was hard for me to do that. So from there, I found myself back at home, just doing a lot of training on my own, staying ready, staying prepared. And then from there, it kind of blossomed into, me catching kids out in the community that I knew, whether I played with their older siblings or family members that, they were just roaming the streets, not having to be in school. And, I kind of pulled them into the gym and started training them for a little bit just for free to keep them out of trouble. And that blossomed into me kind of doing training full time. And from there, I say for a little bit, I wasn't sure about me getting into the coaching game. And I went back and I volunteered at my alma mater, Wayne High School, one summer. And then that summer turned into me kind of staying on for the season. And I got this weird love and passion for coaching, and seeing the game from a different perspective. So started from there. And then after that, I ended up getting an opportunity to coach the first year at the Dayton Flight Academy. So the first year that they had the football program, I was a part of that championship team. We had a nice little run. We ended up losing to IMG Academy in the national championship game that we had against them down in Florida. And then after a year after that, I volunteered over here at Witt. It's because my fiance is the head coach over here. And then I was seeing a lot of guys at times around the facility and the indoor working different techniques. And me just being the football player that I am. And then, too, I have this desire to kind of, give as much knowledge as possible to up-and-coming football stars. So kind of seeing these guys work different techniques, and I just give them little tricks and trades and little nuggets here and there to change little technique up. And from there, it blossomed to, hey, coach, how would you feel about volunteering? And I'm like, you know what? Let me see what this could turn into. So from there, the boys really embraced me as a coach, and I had a ball kind of just watching them develop. And this year was my first official year to kind of have the boys full time. So I was able to invest a lot more of my knowledge and wisdom that I've obtained over my course of my time, of playing ball, and just seeing them have success this season was phenomenal.
Well, you did a great job with these guys, as we've mentioned. And I imagine when you look at the way you coach the game and the philosophy behind the way you coach, what you're doing with these guys, some of the techniques. You mentioned Coach Larry Johnson, one of the best in the business. I'm sure you learned a lot for him. What is your philosophy for these guys? How you're looking at what is success for these guys? How do you define that for them?
The biggest thing for me is, honestly, I love each one of the guys in the room, how different they are. So for me, I joke around with them and I say I like flavors. You know what I mean? I tell all my athletes in my room and any of them coming in, we need to figure out who you are as the football player. And from there, we're going to enhance what you do well, and then we'll add other tools to your bag as we go. And not only are we going to equip you with the tools, but I'm going to teach you how to use them, when to keep them put up. So we're not only getting better football knowledge, but you're going to get better knowledge of self and honestly where your deficiencies lie and where your strengths lie. And from there, my biggest thing with a lot of the boys is, outside of knowing self, I'm a firm believer in my best players. So-called best players have to be my hardest workers, because I'm going to hold you to a higher standard. So I think with that within our room, everybody, as far as the brotherhood element, is phenomenal, because once again, they are who they are and they accept each other. And then on the back end, my older guys do a great job of working with my younger guys. Once again, we go back to my so-called best players have to be my hardest workers, and I hold them to a different standard. So when we're in practice and there's such like small things that what I feel like is base foundation technique work, if a young guy is struggling with it, I'm all for it, pointing out an old guy, hey, look, go fix that for me, right? For me, it shows me that, okay, my old guys are actually listening and truly know what they're doing, how to do it, when to do it. And in that token, too, is showing me they know how to teach the material. So the young guys, too, is now getting knowledge of peers, because a lot of times the boys in the room will be around each other more than they'll be around me. So the times they don't have access to Coach Landers, they have access to the older guy, or a guy that's starting, or a guy that's been in the system now for a while, that truly knows what he's doing, to still get that constant coaching, that constant teaching. So, and then also too, I feel like it develops a better brotherhood within the room. Why? Because my older guys, it allows them to see where the young guys are, because everybody's starting point is different. I tell all of my boys, my philosophy as well is, coach is going to meet you where you at. You come from different programs, different teaching, knowledge. Regardless, we're going to build a great base foundation. And once you get knowledge of self, we'll kind of know what direction we need to go with your game.
So, Coach, one of your jobs as the defensive line coach is to make sure that you're setting them up for success in the way that you're preparing them for the game. So you sit down over the course of a weekend, Monday, Tuesday, whatever it might be. What's your approach to game planning as you're looking at the opposing offensive line and trying to find those areas to exploit?
Honestly, I'll say for me, when we sitting down, first thing that I look at is, how does the offensive line indoor the box move as a unit? When you're looking at D-line compared to O-line, have to move on one accord. On D-line, we have to the best of our ability, disrupt that accord. So for me, it's okay, let's see where their deficiencies lie. Okay, now let's look at where our deficiencies lie. Where would I try to expose and attack us? From then, the focal point for practice is, okay, let's focus on enhancing and getting better in the areas that we are lagging. And then the areas that we are strong, we're going to always keep developing and nitpicking and breaking it down and getting it better. So, and then I'll say too, for me going through the week, a lot of my boys in the room, their football IQ has enhanced so much from summer to when the season started that it'd be times that they're coming to me, hey, coach, I saw this on film. Hey, coach, I got this tip on film. Hey, coach, this is staying consistent. So I have to also give kudos to my boys. They do a great job of watching film and breaking down their opponents as well. And then as far as when you're looking at Coach Alan Moore and Joe Nemeth, for me being a young coach in the game, when we sit up on the board together, I've learned so much from them that honestly, they help kind of navigate my week to week. Just because it's like, for me, it's, coach, what are we thinking game plan wise? Well, I think this, that, and the third. Okay, it's time they'll ask, hey, coach, do you feel like we can do it? Hey, let me teach it. Let me coach it. Let's see. And if it works, if it doesn't, we'll have to find another solution. So I think all the way across the board, the staff and the players help me as far as preparing for week-to-week games. I can't just pinpoint one thing that I do.
So you mentioned these guys coming to you for some of those tips. When you sit them down in the room, what is the detail you want these guys to focus on when you're watching film? I mean, it's easy to put a bunch of guys in the room and watch film and look at this, look at that, but the details of it, I think, become important for you. What are those details?
So when we're looking at run plays, right, what a team's run tendencies are, my D-line, no. Okay, the first thing that they're going to look at, how does the O-line move is one. Second thing, where can we find their deficiencies? You know what I mean? Where can we try to exploit the most expendable or the biggest liability on the O-line? And then the second thing is, okay, let's watch their technique. If I have to get certain fits, if I'm getting zone 2, zone away, if I'm going to get double teamed, how should I play it? Who should I fit? So my biggest thing is, like, if you're getting double quite a bit, how am I going to play the double? How am I going to defeat the double? If teams like to do a lot of RPOs, somebody might give away an indicator that, hey, it's probably going to be more run than pass in this RPO or if it's a play action. So I'd say the biggest thing for the boys is they really hone in and try to nitpick on what little tips can I get from my opponent to tell me either what I'm going to get, what I'm going to see, or what can prepare me to play the next play.
So getting into the execution a little bit and thinking of where you guys are with sacks, like did very well in sacks this year, 3.5 sacks per game. What specific techniques, or was there a handful of things? How are you teaching that technique to get to the quarterback?
Honestly, it's a handful of things. It's a multitude of things. The biggest thing to get into the quarterback is the defense has to be working together. The same way that the offensive line has to work on one accord, the defense has to learn how to build an efficient umbrella around the quarterback. And I'll say outside of the D-line complementing each other, individual performances, it all comes down to just technique. I'd say every last one of the guys on the D-line have a deep bag of different things that they can get into, but they also know this too. Yeah, we have a bunch of different technique and fundamentals and different pass rush setup that I can work on, but each offensive lineman is different, right? So one thing that I really challenge them on is, okay, what is your game plan this week for this guy? Because week to week, your O-linemen are going to look different. They're going to have different deficiencies. They'll give you different tendencies. So I'll have to give a lot of kudos to the boys on. They do a great job at really watching their one-on-one matchups and breaking down their one-on-one matchups. And then they'll revert back to me. Hey, coach, look, this is what I'm thinking for this week. Yes, that's perfect. Okay, now from there, depending on what that individual really wants to work, most of the drills that will work in individual practice will cover the base foundation. I will myself nitpick that specific athlete as we go through the drills and go through the week, specifically for what they're looking at in their rushes. When we get to practice throughout the week, the guys do a great job at We're not rushing against our offensive line come Saturday. I have to prepare myself to rush against DePaul's offensive line. I have to prepare myself to rush against Dennison's offensive line, Wooster's offensive line. Those are the offensive linemen that I have to prepare myself to rush against. So if I take a loss in practice, but I have an efficient rush that's going to put me in great position to have success on Saturday, then we're cool. Why? Because I'm getting those repetitive reps throughout the week. When game day comes, I've already done it, at least knocked the rust off of it 100 times. So rep 101, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be simple.
Future you faces some big expectations. Work out more, go to bed earlier, and most importantly, make smart money decisions. Thankfully, today you has Bank of America. One place with tools and guidance to help balance tasks from budgeting to saving. So you can just be you with big plans. Do more with a bank that asks, what would you like the power to do? Explore our tips and more at bankofamerica.com/futureyou.
The Volvo XC60 plug-in hybrid is about performance. Not just on the road, but in life. With not only trunk space, but room to make memories. It's electric, with a backup plan, where the only speed that matters is how fast you can slow down. The Volvo XC60 plug-in hybrid. Performance where it matters the most. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
So, Coach, thinking about this too, you guys were 10th in the country in tackles for loss, and you had 3.5 sacks a game, 8.2 tackles for loss per game. It's finding that balance. I mean, and especially with young linemen, I know, and having coached the position way back when, being able to emphasize that gap responsibility in their run fits, but encouraging some of that aggressive play that's going to get them to the quarterback. There's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, you mentioned giving them some tips, them understanding some keys. You mentioned their football IQ. But for you, how does that come together so you have that lineman who can excel in his run fits and at the same time, when necessary, pin his ears back and get to the quarterback?
Honestly, a lot of that comes and falls back on the boys for me. I feel like they do well together. You'll see in games, they naturally have a good feel for one another. If one person is committing to a rush and might be out of gap, you'll see the inside guy make an edge guy right, or inside guy gets washed down. You'll see the opposite inside guy make that inside guy right. So at times they do a great job, I feel, at complementing each other. And I think once again, we go back to the brotherhood and the camaraderie of the room. I feel like at times they know each other's game as well enough, because they do, and I do force a lot of coaching amongst each other. You know what I mean? Giving each other tips and really watching each other in practice to be able to say, hey, look, work this, work that. So I feel like they as a whole do a great job together at, hey, look, we're getting a little bit out of our rush lanes. This is how we got to balance it out. Okay, well, I'm getting double teamed over here if I'm the 2-eye or the nose guy heavy, and they're washing me out. Okay, well, the backside, my 3-tech nose, okay, I'll close the pocket for you and balance you out if that inside gap gets too big. And vice versa between the inside and edge guys. So honestly, it really comes back to, I believe in the players. And if you got a good foundation within the room and within the unit, it's real easy for them to play together on Saturdays. And when they play together, their individual games, I feel like blossom a lot.
So you mentioned to me you're going to be going through your exit interviews here from the season after the Thanksgiving break, and obviously starting to plan the development for the next year. So in looking at that, what kind of things are you focused on in the exit interviews that are going to help you to develop that plan for the future?
Honestly, the biggest thing for me is sitting down with the boys and getting true evaluations from them. And I believe in me evaluating them, evaluating themselves, and them evaluating me. So if I can see kind of where they feel, where their heads are, and honestly get their feedback on, okay, look, in what ways do you feel like I could have done better coaching you this year? that'll help me going into spring. You know what I mean? So for me, the biggest thing is just having open dialogue, open conversation with them. We'll probably sit down and watch a little bit of film just to see their development from when they started to when they finished. And then from there, we'll put together a game plan going into the spring. I have high expectations of all the boys in the room because we get a period where we can't touch them.
Right.
And I have high expectations of them getting in work together on their own. You know what I mean? That's one of the things, too, that you try to prepare them for during the season. There is going to be a time frame where coach can't be there. And I see how hungry they are for knowledge and how eager and how hungry they are to get better. I know they're going to be utilizing the facility, getting extra work in probably 2 times a day together. Well, they have to be able to coach each other. So they're going to be working all of the base foundation before I even get to them, especially with these young guys. Now going into the spring, when you have a lot more time to really sit down and focus on fundamentals, technique, things of that nature, because you'll have a lot more indie period, we'll have a lot better understanding of where we are as far as our baseline as a D-line with our young guys and our old guys and the gap that we might need to bridge. And then, too, for the old guys, this is a time for them to really, okay, we have a great base foundation. Now, let's really nitpick our game and what do we really need to get better at? What do we need to clean up? Or what do I want to start adding to my bag during the offseason that I have not put on film yet? So for them, it's real nitpicky, real nitty-gritty. For the younger guys, it's, hey, look, now this is the time where it's not as fast. The playbook is not hitting you as fast. You know what I mean? We actually got time to spend time getting personable work in to truly develop you. So for them, it's now really getting them familiar with their base foundation, get the base foundation set. So that way, going into next camp, those young guys that have that base foundation, now they really can figure out who they are as a football player and figure out their identity. They'll probably figure that out during camp. Now I have my young guys that's caught up. I have some vets that, hey, we're there. So when we get into later on down the road and we continue this cycle, there'll never be a drop-off, whether it's older guys or younger guys.
Coach, I commend you on also making sure that they're evaluating you. I think that's so important. And to me, it's not just something a young coach could do. I think it's all of us can improve throughout our career. When you look at getting that feedback, what are you going to do with that feedback? How are you going to develop yourself? And I guess, is there an example of it you could give us?
Oh, yeah, I feel like this, the same way as the players can get better, as a coach, I can get better. It could be maybe the verbal cues that I'm giving them could be better. Maybe I need to reevaluate how I teach, how I break down. One thing about me, too, is I've also worked in the education system the past 2 years. So last year I was the family engagement specialist at a school by the name of Buckeye Community Schools, and this year I'm a student mentor. And being in the education system, I've been able to see that a lot of kids truly learn different. You have some kids that are visual, some that are auditorial, and some that are truly hands-on. So for me, I've tried to incorporate all three of those elements into how I teach them. One thing about me still having youth on my side is I can actually get out and demo the drills for the boys. It's, hey, coach, I don't understand it. After I've explained it, after we've maybe watched it, or, hey, coach, I'm still not getting it. Okay, cool. We're going to step it together. I have the ability to do so. So I try to see in all three ways, either do I need to fix some things in those three ways, or do I need to figure out, okay, this athlete is more of a visual learner. He's not so much as auditorial, or this athlete learns better if I have him walk through it verbatim. He has to feel the different phases, the different segments, and the different steps of what we're trying to get to. I can't just sit him in the film room and we watch the drill. He can't just sit up and watch 4 or 5 other guys that don't have issues with this drill do it right for him to get it. We have to walk him through it. So for me, it's going to be figuring out, okay, who my athletes are a little bit better and maybe how I need to adjust and change how I teach them. And then for my younger guys, it's going to be the hardest just because they're just now getting here. You know what I mean? So compared to the older guys that have a little bit more of a base foundation, with me and just within the game as a whole, it's a little bit easier for me to navigate them. The younger guys will be a little bit different because during the season, when season hits, it's go all gas, no breaks. Spring time is a little bit different. So I'll really be able to figure out where I need to meet my athletes at or meet these young athletes at, and we go from there.
Coach, I appreciate you joining us and talking to us about the season and how you do things. Congratulations on a successful season, and best of luck to you and the Tigers in 2025.
I appreciate it. You have a blessed one.
Logan, just a great job there by Wittenberg. I know we have some other teams and units to point out for this recognition.
Yeah, like you said in the opening, we're trying to leave the playoff teams alone. They're all trying to, on short weeks, trying to prepare for teams that they probably haven't seen before. But as you can expect, a lot of the teams that rank really highly in these stats that I'm putting out are teams that are going to be playing in the playoffs. So, some of the top D lines in the playoffs this year are teams like Hope, Bethel, Linfield, and DePaul. Those are probably the top 4 defensive lines that are still playing. And all 4 of those teams, they have sack rates over 10%. They have tackle for loss rates over 18%. Hope has a tackle for loss rate of 21.9%. So 1 out of every 5 run plays against them, they're forcing a tackle for a loss. All right, so 4 just absolutely outstanding defensive fronts there. So when you're watching games this weekend and in the future, if those teams win, that's something to be paying attention to. Those defensive lines for those 4 teams are all outstanding and something to watch for when you're watching the games.
All 4 of those schools you mentioned, too, have been on the podcast in one form or another. I know both for DePaul and Linfield, they had both their offense and defense recognized during the season, and we had Hope on as our staff of the week. And we also had Bethel on as the staff of the week in recognizing them during the season. So a great group of coaches there doing a great job. And next week, we're going to focus on the offensive line and the job they're doing up front. But just give us a little highlight of how we're putting that one together.
Yep, so that's very similar to what we're doing for the defensive line. So when you're an O-line, a lot of staffs will tell you just, get us 2-3 yards, and then the running backs will take care of the rest and keep that quarterback clean. So we're trying to do the same thing, isolate them for TFLs allowed, sacks allowed, and then what's your rushing yards per play. O-line doesn't necessarily have a lot of control over like the depth of your passes or anything like that, but if you are allowing sacks at a high rate, then it's probably going to be a little more difficult to push the ball down the field. But yeah, those are the stats that we're looking at for our offensive line next week. So excited to talk to those guys and see what we're doing on the offensive front as well.
Yeah, it should be fun here throughout the playoffs, talking to different coaches and the way they coach their units, their positions. We will, like with this one, talk to some position coaches too. So Logan, again, thanks for putting this all together, and we'll get back after it next week.
All right, sounds good, Keith.
Thank you again for supporting the Coach and Coordinator podcast. As you know, we want to support coaches at all levels by providing insight into the mindset and the skill set of the best coaches. We also want to share the best tools and technology that they use, and you can find those in our 10% toolkit. The link is in the show notes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.